God does amazing things when we trust him. If he's called you to homeschool, then do it, because it not only will change your children, it will change you.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. Welcome to our homeschool survival series. I am so glad that you've joined us today. And this topic that we're talking about this week, I know is going to hit home with so many of you. And we have a lot of parents who really need this encouragement. It's not everyone, but I think everyone in one way or another will be encouraged by the topic that we're going to discuss today. We have Peggy Ployhar on with us today, and she is with SPED Homeschool. SPEDHomeschool.com is her website. And we're talking about specialized learning needs, kids who are just outside of the box. And I think every one of our kids in one way or another is outside of the box. Every one of us in one way or another are outside of the box, right? And so we're going to just bring some encouragement on how you can homeschool your specialized learner. Before we roll into this, I want to thank our sponsor, CTC Math. If you guys are looking for a great math curriculum, check them out, ctcmath.com. You can try them out for free. Go on their website, ctcmath.com, and see if it might be a good fit for your family. This, I know, is something that prevents a lot of parents from homeschooling their kids. They don't believe that they can. They believe that their child has needs that are so big and so specialized and so difficult maybe to handle that they need to have an expert, quote unquote, to be able to educate their kids. And so Peggy is here to encourage you. I'm here to encourage you and just let you know that, you know what, as we say on the podcast all the time, God has given you everything you need in order to accomplish what he's called you to. You are the parent of the child that God has given you. And it is not by mistake that you have these kids that you have. And whatever their needs are, God has perfectly equipped you to be able to disciple them and to educate them and to get them through life as he's called us to do as parents. And so I'm really excited to have Peggy back. It's been a while since you've been on. And so welcome back to the podcast, Peggy.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about you and your family and your ministry and what you're doing.
Sure. So I am the founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, but didn't start out that way. I started out as the parent who said, my kids are going to go to private school and I am going to be done with this. And God had another plan. My oldest was actually diagnosed on the spectrum when he was 5, and his private school said, we really can't get him even through kindergarten. And so prayed a lot about that, and we ended up starting to homeschool. And something I thought I would hate, I absolutely loved. And this is my 19th year. Wow. I've graduated my oldest 2, and my youngest is graduating this year. So it's been a long haul. But in the process, I've worked for 2 different state organizations as their special needs consultant. And then in 2017, founded SPED Homeschool to reach a wider audience.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so neat to see how the Lord takes the thing in our life that is so difficult and then uses it to minister to others. You know,
exactly.
we talk all the time about the fact that God has given each one of us an ability and a gift and a talent and a passion for something to be used for his kingdom. And so I'm so glad that you are using what the Lord has given you in order to minister to families. You know, and like I said, I know that this is a difficult thing for many parents who just think, you know, there's no way I can homeschool this kid. Or maybe they've had their kid home with them for a year and they're like, I just can't do this another day. Maybe they have more than one child. I know many families have multiple kids who have specialized learning needs. And this is a hard thing. So Peggy, where do we start with this? How do we bring encouragement, you know, to these parents who are just like, what do I do? How do I handle this?
Well, I just want to encourage you. I was probably like the least likely to succeed in homeschooling. So if you look at your life and look at me now and say, I could never be her, don't do that. I mean, we look at all of these homeschoolers, and I remember saying, when we get 5 years in, I'm going to be, the perfect homeschooler, and still was not. But I had an anger issue. I was depressed. I wanted to commit suicide. My son was talking about committing suicide when he was 5. That's how we started our homeschool journey.
Wow.
And where we are right now is a totally different place. But God does amazing things when we trust him. If he's called you to homeschool, then do it, because it not only will change your children, it will change you.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest encouragement. I mean, I'm on the autism spectrum, and so are all of my children. And, looking at this, it didn't look like it was going to be a good thing for any of us.
Yeah.
But God knew that when he called me to homeschool my kids, and he knew that I had what they needed and what I needed to help them succeed.
Yeah.
So don't look at what you have. Don't look at your finances. Don't look at any of that. Don't look at how far your child is behind other kids. Look at what you got every day. You have the God of the universe
Yeah.
on your side,
Amen.
and he is ready to guide you and lead you step by step all the way, because you don't know where your kids are going. I mean, I could have fit my kids into this cookie cutter idea of what they needed to be and what the school system said they had to be. But instead, I just let them be them. I studied them. I helped them to work on the things they weren't so good at. And I pushed them in the things that they were gifted in. And there is the big thing that homeschooling gives us that advantage of, especially for struggling learners and kids that learn differently, because they have gifts that usually aren't what we call subjects, but they are things that will help them excel in their life. I mean, I had no idea that my oldest, when I started giving him mechanical engineering lessons before he could read, I mean, I had this idea that maybe he'd be an engineer, but he's now a biomedical engineer, and he designs 3D, like, implantable medical plates and for people's jaws and their skulls. I mean,
Wow.
it blows my mind, but God knew that.
Yeah.
And so he used things in our day to help me to shape and mold my son for his specific calling. Not just that we would have a good transcript when he graduated high school so that he could go to, a school and get a good job. No, God had a specific thing in mind, and I just had to be willing to listen.
When you were pulled into the principal's office and then she said,
Mhm.
I think you need to have your child tested, and then you decided to homeschool, did she recommend that? Or did you just at that point think, you know what, I need to bring my child home? And how did that all unfold with you and your child and your family?
Yeah, well, the crazy thing is I had a lot of anger issues, and I was blaming myself for everything that was going wrong with my child. I thought for sure I was causing all the problems, and she knew not to diagnose him. But when I came back with the diagnosis, she handed me this packet of paper of articles she had found. Because, of course, like I said, there was only a couple books out at
Right.
that point that even existed on high functioning autism. And I really prayed about it. And I knew, because my son was so depressed. This is what he told me when I asked him what it was like to be him. At age 5, he said, "Mom, it's like God is a bird and he's laid an egg, and that's me. And a snake has come and
Hmm.
swallowed me up."
Wow.
And I thought, oh my, this is how I feel. I've never expressed it that way, but that's how my depression felt. And I was like, there is no way I'm putting him in a public school that is going to put him in a room, tell him that he's bad at everything. Life is going to end really fast for this child.
Yeah.
And so I just was very convicted. We have to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we have to do it. And I felt so alone. I had made a couple friends along the way, but I would even leave like homeschool conferences just crying because there was nothing there for me. But I persevered because I knew it was best for my kids. And so I just want to encourage parents, there are so many more resources out there, maybe so many that it drives you crazy that you have so many resources. But God will give you peace and show you what you need for your kids. He made them. He gave them to you, and that's not a mistake. And if you feel that call to homeschool, he's gonna get you through, and it's gonna be good.
Yeah. Absolutely not a mistake. It's so interesting to look at the different kids that God gives us,
Mm,
and he trusts us with our kids,
yeah.
and he does not make mistakes in the way that our kids are created, with
Mm,
whatever quirkiness they have, whatever quirkiness
exactly.
we have, they are exactly who they're supposed to be, created by a God who loves them and who
Mm.
made them exactly as they are. And so I really appreciate your encouragement. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about how parents can get started. I mean, what do they do once they,
Right.
figure out, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to bring my kids home or keep my kids home. But now what? So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back and talk about that.
Sounds good.
What we do at IEW is break through the noise of the grammar and the writing prompts, and we say, this is what you do, step by step. And I've witnessed it over and over again, both watching Andrew teach and hearing from parents, this is the best writing program. We've made it so easy and made it really affordable. So any mom can teach writing to their children using our course, and we guarantee it.
To try 3 weeks of free lessons, visit IEW.com. Let's talk about how to get started. You've got a parent who maybe they have their child home. Maybe their kid is just barely reaching school age and they're thinking, I want to homeschool. I feel that tug. And I know that this is what's right for my family, what the Lord's calling me to do, but I just don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've got a parent whose child is in school and they just know it's time to bring them home. How do you encourage those parents? What do they do?
What do they do? Well, we do it a little bit different. I know, and probably a lot of your guests have talked about deschooling. Well, I'm going to talk about deschooling specialized education ways, because our kids are so unique. And so even to deschool means that we take, the typical school model out. Well, to take it a little bit further, what I had to learn was not only how I like to teach, because that is very important, but I also needed to study my kids and to know what drove them. Because when you hit that sweet spot for kids who struggle and they dive into something they really like, all of a sudden that struggle goes away. Yeah. And so I'll use an example of what I did. And this is just because I'm a scientist by nature. I have a degree in physics. And so I thought, well, let's make this an experiment. And so I knew there was a couple different methodologies that I could choose from. And no, understand, this was 19 years ago. There was no Charlotte Mason. There was, no online, nothing.
Right.
we had email.
Yeah.
We were happy. But so I just thought, okay, there's the traditional textbook way, there's the literature-based way, and there's unit studies. That's what I got. So let's try it out. Let's use a common denominator of 1700s, seafaring. And so we did textbooks, and I about had a mutiny on my hands because my kids did not like to color. They did not want to sit still and listen to textbooks. All of that just did not work. So I thought, okay, literature-based. We'll go to the library. We'll get some books on this. We'll all sit on the couch and be cozy, but they were jumping on the couch. And again, that didn't work so well. And so we did the unit study approach the final day, and we talked about knot tying. And so I got 20 feet of rope for each of them, and we learned all these different knots that we could tie. And I said, okay, so this was the time of pirates. So you can tie me up, but you have to use the proper knots. And they were like, yes. So I kind of figured out that, I liked the unit study approach for myself because I'm one of those people. I look at a recipe and go, oh yeah, okay, I got the ingredients, we're good to go. I never follow the instructions. And if I would have bought a curriculum that had instructions, I would have never used it anyways. So I understood that about myself, but I also understood what motivated my children. And as I used different curriculum, I found that my oldest was a builder. I could assign him to build anything related to our unit study, and he would build it. He would go find the supplies around the house, in the backyard, or wherever. My second one wanted to put the costumes together. He always had, Batman costume. He was Peter Pan. And still to this day, he likes going to anime conferences, and getting dressed up. Yeah. Anyways, but to take those things that were kind of drove them, and it allowed me as a parent to not have to work so hard in teaching them, because after I studied them, I knew how to drive them. And so take that time to really learn your children, what drives them, because those struggles with math, those struggles with reading, all of those things are going to be there. But can you make learning fun too? And show them that they are gifted
Yeah.
as part of their school as well. And if you can find that balance and be okay with, I'm not getting all my curriculum out of a box, maybe you want to start there, but getting very eclectic, because that's what people who've homeschooled a learner who is very out of the box, you
Yeah.
can't teach them out of a box. And so you have to learn to tweak and to change and to be comfortable with saying, well, this worked for a while. Now we got to put it on the shelf and try something different. And guess what? That's what special education teachers do all the time.
Yeah.
You are not a bad teacher if you do that. They are guessing as much as you are, and they're actually guessing more because they don't know your child as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. There is such an opportunity we have as homeschoolers to know our kids better than anyone. You
Mhm.
talk about studying our kids. Can you give some, and I know this might seem like a silly question because obviously we know our kids,
Mm.
but can you dive a little bit deeper into how really to study our kids, especially when we have kids who are specialized learners? Because oftentimes I know those kids are like hugely introverted.
Mhm.
And maybe they're not going to be able to either they don't know how to communicate with their parent,
Mhm.
or maybe they know how to, but they just choose not to. And I would imagine in a situation like that, it would be very difficult for that parent to really know how to learn who their kid is and become a true student of their child. So
Mhm.
how can that parent really learn to study their child?
Yeah. So you have to watch their behavior. And so in every kid, behavior is communication. That is one of the things we say in our community all the time. If your child is hyper focused on something
Mhm.
and maybe they don't want to put a book down, then there's probably something about that book that is drawing them. What is it? Can I
Mhm.
find a book similar, maybe on the same topic? Did they like that too? Or maybe it's the pictures. Let's find another book at the library. You can make this free. You don't have to spend a
Sure.
lot of money. um, but for my oldest, it was he had to have Legos, and he was building Legos all the time. He was building things. And I thought, I'm going to take advantage of this because now I know that this is kind of, so I moved past the Legos and we got a Connect set. And actually the Connect set built, I think, 12 different historical bridges. And so
Oh,
we
wow.
studied mechanical engineering. What is the structure that actually holds up each of these bridges? Because they replicated it within this set. Um, and so here he is learning this. I'm taking it one step further. Okay. And then moving on to, well, eventually he moved into 3D printing,
Oh, wow.
and so where can we push the envelope
Mhm.
of what building is and where that goes? Sometimes it just was a dead end. My one son, I thought, oh, he loves programming. Let's do IT because that's what my husband does. And he was bored out of his mind. And I went, okay, well, we're
Maybe not.
setting that aside. What else do you want to learn? I mean, this is when he was in high school. And he said, I just want to learn to build my own computer. So, we made actually an entire high school course out of building his own computer and sourcing parts and doing all these things. But that was, driven again on who he was and what he wanted to learn about. And so a lot of times it is trial and error.
Mhm.
It's saying, okay, well, we learned from this, that didn't work, or, ooh, we've got something here. And let your kids go on rabbit trails. It is so hard if you're very much a check the box type of planner,
Yeah.
but build in that time to allow them to do that because more than often, those rabbit trails are going to lead to where their career is going to go
Yeah.
and what God has really given them a gift in and a passion to pursue.
Right.
And if we're always moving them back to the curriculum and what we want them to learn, we're going to miss those opportunities a lot of the time.
Yeah. So how do you fill in the gaps then with the curriculum that is necessary? A lot of parents live in states where they have
Mhm.
required subjects and, even extracurricular activities, things like that, that are
Right.
required for graduation. We still want to get these kids to graduation because many of these kids will
Mhm.
go on to college or university. How do
Right.
you fill in those gaps for those subjects and um, those pieces of their education that they're just not created to do. What do you
Right.
do there?
Well, I'll give an example of my middle child who was definitely an out of the box learner, and we actually had a discussion about midway through high school because we were butting heads so badly, and I said, "Fine, you either need to do a set curriculum, or you're going to tell me how you're going to do all of the subjects that Texas requires, because we live in the state of Texas. There are required subjects. And I said, it's up to you. At 16, you either tell me how these are going to be fulfilled by what you want to do, or you're doing something out of a box." And he was so motivated that he figured out how to do it. I mean, he did English. He decided that his friends overseas were writing papers for their colleges, and they needed to write them in English. So he was going to correct their English for them.
Oh, nice.
Okay, well, because he's such a social person, that made more sense to him than writing a paper. He also did a podcast with his friend. They wrote out all the questions and their conversation ahead of time too. So he did some more writing of his own, that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did recoloring of movie videos and just a variety of different things. He built even math into his computer building project by building a program that tracked the prices of all the parts so that he could buy them at the lowest price.
Oh,
And
wow.
I thought, okay, that is math that makes sense for him.
Right.
Because we tried algebra and
Just wasn't for him.
no, it wasn't for me to teach him either.
Right.
It was going to end the
It's not for me to
relationship very
teach my
fast.
kids either.
So, but yeah, but then, it's with each kid, it's different because with my oldest at age 17, we were doing calculus at home.
Yeah.
Because that is what he did well at. Reading, on the other hand, was something he really struggled in.
Yeah.
And so it's with each kid. And so you don't have this standard transcript,
Right.
but just praying a lot. Where does God have peace? I mean, my oldest told me he wanted to go to welding school. And I thought, he doesn't need calculus, but God told me he needed calculus. I said, okay, well, we're doing calculus this year. And he didn't mind it. And lo and behold, he comes home from welding school and says, "Mom, I don't think I want to be a welder. God is telling me I need to go to college to be an engineer."
Wow.
Okay, well, thank you.
And now you have calculus under your belt. So
Yes, exactly.
Moving on
so
as
he
an
was
engineer.
his transcript was completely ready to make that transition because God knew.
yes. Yeah.
I didn't have to know. I just did what was in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Just follow that piece where God leads you, and it's never going to steer you wrong.
Yeah. Great. Good stuff. All right. We are out of time, but we're going to come back on Wednesday. We're going to continue talking about this. We're going to talk about all sorts of things about therapy options, how to find your tribe. I love that you talk about finding your tribe. That's such an important part of having a child, homeschooling a child with specialized learning needs. You've got to find your people who will have your back and who will encourage you and support you, and several other things that we're going to discuss. So thank you so much, Peggy. Where can people find out more about you and your ministry?
Sure. At spedhomeschool.com. It's SPED homeschool.com. And you can start there and look at all of our resources. And I guess we'll be talking more of those soon.
Yep. Great. All right. We'll put those links, of course, in the show notes, as we always do. Thank you guys for listening. Please share this with a friend and please leave a review for this podcast. We would really appreciate that. Have a great afternoon and we'll see you back here on Wednesday. Bye.
You don't just lose a generation of children. We're talking about the millennials as if they just decided to up and leave. You lose a generation of grandparents, and you lose a generation of parents, and then you lose a generation of children.
And that's really what's happened in our culture, is that we had generations of kids from the church who started to doubt God's word, and that doubt leads to unbelief. And a lot of them are walking away from the church. 2/3 of young people have walked away from the church by the time they reach college age, very few returning. The younger generation that are in our churches, the millennials in our churches, 40% say they're not born again, 65% say if you're a good person you'll go to heaven, and they're so secularized in their thinking. It really comes down to the fact that most of them went to public school where they haven't been taught how to defend the Christian faith, And at home, we're not giving them the answers, and at churches, we're not giving them the answers, so many of them drift away from the Christian faith.
We need to empower our children with answers. If we believe in Judeo-Christian values and ethics, we need to be bringing that into the culture, not removing it from the culture, right? And so we need to empower our children to be able to argue on behalf of their beliefs.